The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Roadside Rest, a small family diner just off Highway 40. The scent of grilled burgers and fresh fries drifted through the open windows, mixing with the warm summer air. Inside, families occupied most of the booths, the gentle hum of conversation and clinking silverware creating a peaceful atmosphere. It was the kind of place where nothing unexpected ever happened, where life moved at a predictable, comfortable pace, until the shadows arrived. The whisper started as a distant rustle, growing deeper with each passing second until the very air seemed to thicken with an unnatural chill. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Every head in the diner turned towards the windows as 8 sleek black sedans pulled into the parking lot, their tinted windows gleaming under the fading sunlight. The figures emerged with ethereal grace, their dark cloaks adorned with subtle emblems that needed no explanation. Vampires. If you believe that redemption is possible, that the past doesn't define us, and that family can be found in the most unexpected places, then pause for a moment. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Night Tales, and tell us in the comments below, where are you watching from today? Because this story will remind you that people, or beings, are more than what they appear to be. The vampires moved toward the diner entrance with a confidence that came from centuries in the shadows. They were an imposing sight, pale faces framed by flowing hair, arms marked with ancient scars, boots silent on the pavement. The leader was a man who appeared in his late 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver streaking through his raven hair, and a face that had seen more nights than most could imagine. His name was Elias Shade Voss, and the crest on his cloak marked him as Elder of the Midnight Covenant. Inside the diner, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The easy chatter died away, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Parents instinctively pulled their children closer. A young couple near the window quickly looked down at their plates. The hostess, a woman in her 40s named Linda, gripped her menus a little tighter, her professional smile wavering slightly. But there was one person who didn't share the room's apprehension. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, sat in a corner booth with her grandmother. Her name was Mia Reyes, and she had the kind of fearless curiosity that only children possess. While everyone else watched the vampires with varying degrees of fear and suspicion, Mia's eyes lit up with pure fascination. The vampires settled into 2 large booths near the back of the diner. They moved with a deliberate calm, their presence filling the space without a word spoken. Shade took his seat, facing the entrance, his sharp eyes scanning the room once before settling into a relaxed posture. The other vampires followed his lead, their cloaks whispering. As they got comfortable, Linda approached their table with visible nervousness, her hands trembling slightly as she handed out menus. "Welcome to Roadside Rest," she managed, her voice professional despite the anxiety clear on her face. "Can I start you gentlemen off with something to drink?" Shade looked up at her, and his expression softened. "Tea, black," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "And whatever soup you've got that's fresh. We've been traveling since dawn." The other vampires placed similar orders, their voices polite, their demeanor far less threatening than their appearance suggested. As Linda hurried away to fill their orders, the tension in the diner remained thick. But it had shifted slightly. These beings weren't causing trouble. They were just weary wanderers looking for respite. That's when Mia made her move. Before her grandmother could stop her, the little girl slid out of the booth and walked directly toward the table where Shade sat. Her grandmother, Mrs. Reyes, reached out with a gasp of alarm, but Mia was too quick, too determined. She half rose from her seat, panic flooding her face. Mia walked right up to Shade's table, her small frame barely reaching the edge. The other vampires noticed her immediately, their conversation stopping as they watched this fearless child approach. Shade turned his head, his piercing gaze landing on the girl. For a moment, the entire diner held its breath. Mia looked up at Shade with bright, curious eyes, completely unfazed by the intimidating presence before her. Then, with the innocent boldness only a child could possess, she spoke. "Hello, sir. Mia said clearly, her voice carrying in the silent diner. My mother has a scar just like yours. The words hung in the air like a veil waiting to tear. Shade's expression froze, his eyes narrowing as he looked down at the child. The other vampires went completely still, their attention laser-focused on the exchange. Mrs. Reyes covered her mouth with her hand, her face going pale. The entire diner seemed to stop breathing. Shade slowly set down his teacup, which Linda had just delivered. His gaze moved from Mia's innocent face to his own exposed wrist, where an intricate scar was clearly visible. It was a mark specific to his covenant. A coiled serpent emerging from flames, with detailed ridges and ancient runes etched into the skin. It wasn't a common wound, but a ritual brand, meaningful and not something you'd see on a casual survivor. Just like mine, Shade repeated slowly, his voice low and controlled. His eyes, sharp as midnight stars, studied the girl with an intensity that would have made grown men uncomfortable. But Mia just nodded enthusiastically. Yes, sir. She has a snake with fire on her neck. She showed me once when I asked about it. She said it was from a long time ago, before I was born. The atmosphere in the diner shifted from tense to absolutely electric. Shade's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. One of the other, vampires, a massive figure with a shaved head and a faint glow in his eyes, leaned forward, locked on Mia. Another, younger with a flowing beard, exchanged a meaningful glance with Shade. Mrs. Reyes finally found her voice. Mia, she called out, her tone sharp with panic. Come back here right now. I'm so sorry, sir. She doesn't understand. Shade raised one hand, a simple gesture that silenced her immediately. His attention remained fixed on Mia. What's your mother's name, child? Mia beamed, happy to answer. Her name is Elena Reyes. Well, it used to be Elena Santos before she married my dad, but they're not together anymore. If the diner had been quiet before, it was a crypt now. Shade's face, which had been merely serious, went completely still. Something flickered behind his eyes. A flash of recognition, of memory, of something profound and painful. The massive vampire with the glow sat back heavily in his seat, muttering something under his breath. The younger one with the beard slowly shook his head, a strange smile playing at his lips. Elena Santos, Shade repeated, and there was something in his voice now, something that hadn't been there before. Not anger, but shock. Deep, bone-rattling shock. He looked at Mia with new eyes, really seeing her now, studying her features, her face, the shape of her eyes. And where is your mother now? Shade asked, his voice carefully controlled. She's at work, Mia said simply. She works at the hospital. She's a nurse. Grandma takes care of me after school until Mom gets home. She pointed back at Mrs. Reyes, who looked like she might faint. Shade was quiet for a long moment. The other vampires remained frozen, watching their elder, waiting for his lead. Finally, Shade gestured to the empty space beside him in the booth. Why don't you sit down for a minute, Mia? I'd like to hear more about this scar. Mrs. Reyes started to object, but something in Shade's expression stopped her. It wasn't threatening. It was something else entirely. Something that looked almost like vulnerability. Mia climbed up into the booth with the fearlessness of a child who didn't yet understand danger. She sat next to Shade, her little legs swinging above the floor. It's really pretty, Mia continued. Mom doesn't show it very much. She keeps it covered for work. But I saw it once when she was getting ready, and I asked her about it. And what did she tell you? Shade asked, his voice softer now. She said it was from when she was young and wild, before she became a mom. She said she used to wander the nights with friends who became her family. She called them her brothers and sisters of the shadows. Mia looked up at Shade with innocent admiration. Are you one of those brothers? The question hit like a physical blow. Shade's ageless face showed genuine emotion for the first time. A crack in the eternal exterior. He looked away briefly, his jaw working as he processed something deeply personal. When he looked back at Mia, his eyes were different, warmer somehow, but also filled with an old pain. "Maybe I was," Shade said quietly. "A long time ago. Tell me, Mia, does your mom ever talk about those days? Does she mention anyone named Elias? Or maybe Shade?" Mia scrunched up her face, thinking hard. "I don't think so. She doesn't really talk about it much. Grandma says Mom had a different life before she settled down. Grandma didn't approve, but Mom says those years made her who she is." Shade nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. He reached into his cloak pocket and pulled out his phone. "Mia, I'm going to ask you something, and you can say no if you want. Would it be okay if I called your mom? I think she and I might have some catching up to do." Before Mia could answer, Mrs. Reyes was at the table, her face tight with protective concern. "I don't think that's appropriate," she said firmly, though her voice shook slightly. "Mia, come back to our table now." Shade looked up at her, and for the first time since entering the diner, he smiled. It transformed his face completely, revealing the being beneath the intimidating exterior. "Mrs. Reyes, I understand your concern. I know what we look like. I know what people think when they see us. But I promise you, I mean no harm to your granddaughter or your daughter. If Elena Santos is who I think she is, then she and I knew each other many years ago. We wandered together. We were family." Mrs. Reyes's voice was sharp with disbelief and old resentment. "You people were the reason my daughter nearly threw her life away. She ran with your kind for 2 years, came home marked with scars, afraid of the light. It took her years to straighten herself out, to become the responsible woman she is now." Shade's expression didn't change, but something sad entered his eyes. "I know. And you're right to be angry. The life we lead isn't for everyone. Elena left because she wanted something different, something better. We respected that choice. But Mrs. Reyes, if Elena never told you, let me tell you now. Your daughter saved 3 lives during her time with us. She shielded a fledgling from a hunter's blade. She talked a desperate sister out of greeting the dawn. And she shared her blood to heal a member's child who would have perished without it. Elena Santos was one of the finest souls I've ever known." The diner remained silent, every patron now openly watching the exchange. Mrs. Reyes's expression wavered, shock replacing her defensive anger. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe to Night Tales so we can keep bringing you stories that prove beings are more complex and beautiful than we often realize. Shade pulled out a business card and placed it on the table. "This is my number. I would very much like to speak with Elena if she's willing, but I'll leave that choice to her. Mia, it was an honor meeting you. You're a brave girl." Mia grinned. "Will you tell me stories about when my mom wandered the nights?" "If she says it's okay, I'll tell you all about it," Shade promised. He looked at Mrs. Reyes. "We'll finish our meal and be on our way. We don't want to cause any trouble." Mrs. Reyes picked up the business card with trembling fingers, staring at it as if it might vanish. Then she took Mia's hand and led her back to their booth. The little girl waved at Shade, who waved back with a genuine smile. The vampires finished their meal in relative quiet, though the atmosphere in the diner had changed completely. The fear had dissipated, replaced by curiosity, and even a strange respect. When they stood to leave, Shade left a $100 bill on the table, far more than their modest meal cost. As they filed out, Shade paused at Mrs. Reyes's booth. "Tell Elena that Shade says the serpent endures through the flames. She'll know what it means." Then he and his kin walked out into the fading sunlight, their cloaks swirling softly, their presence no longer threatening, but somehow noble. That evening, when Elena Reyes came home from her shift at the hospital, exhausted and ready to collapse, her mother met her at the door with an expression Elena had never seen before, a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that might have been understanding. "Mom, What's wrong? Elena asked immediately. Mrs. Reyes handed her the business card. A man named Shade came to the diner today. Mia walked right up to him and told him about your scar. Elena's face went completely white. Her hand flew to her neck, where beneath her scrubs the serpent scar lay hidden. Shade was here. Elias was here. Her voice was barely a whisper. He wants you to call him. He said to tell you the serpent endures through the flames. Mrs. Reyes paused, her expression softening. Elena, he told me things about what you did when you were with them. Things you never told me. Elena sank into a chair, the business card trembling in her hands. Tears filled her eyes. I couldn't tell you, Mom. I knew you'd never understand. But those people, they saved me when I was broken. They gave me a family when I felt like I had nothing. Yes, it was dangerous. Yes, I did things I'm not proud of. But I also found myself there. I found my strength. Why did you leave? Her mother asked quietly. Elena looked down at the card, running her thumb over the embossed number. Because Shade told me to. He saw that I wanted something different. A normal life, a family, stability. He said I deserved more than the shadows could give me. So he made me promise to leave, to build the life I really wanted. It was the hardest thing I ever did, walking away from them. They were my brothers and sisters. Mia came running into the room. Mom, did Grandma tell you? I met your night friends. Well, one of them, Shade. He was so cool. He said you were family. Elena pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tight as tears streamed down her face. Yeah, baby, they were family. They still are. That night, after Mia was asleep, Elena sat in her kitchen with her phone in her hand, staring at Shade's number. 15 years had passed since she'd left the Midnight Covenant. 15 years since she'd traded her cloak for scrubs, her nocturnal wanderings for a minivan, the endless night for a stable job and a mortgage. She'd built a good life, a respectable life. She'd become the woman her mother had always wanted her to be. But that scar on her neck, the serpent emerging from flames, that was a reminder of who she'd been, who in some ways she still was. She dialed the number. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. This is Shade. The serpent remembers, Elena said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Even after the flames have faded. There was a long pause, then Shade's voice, rough with feeling. Moonshadow, I can't believe it's really you. They talked for hours that night, sharing memories of the past, the paths they'd wandered, the loved ones lost, and the lives they'd built. Elena's life as a nurse and mother, and Shade's eternal vigil had taken them on different paths, but they shared regrets, choices, and a deep connection. A week later, Shade and two kin came to dinner. Mrs. Reyes, nervous but softened by the beings' stories, watched as they made Elena laugh until she cried. Mia, wide-eyed, heard of a mother she never knew. Fearless, wild, and brave. A woman who wasn't just a nurse, but a legend in her own right. Shade pulled out an old locket with a photo of Elena, young and ethereal, standing under a full moon with a grin that spoke of eternity. You were one of us, Shade said. Always will be. Before leaving, Shade crouched down to Mia. Your mom's one of the bravest. She lived with honor, and when she needed change, she had the courage to make it. Remember that. As the vampires glided off into the night, Elena stood on her porch with Mia and her mother, feeling whole for the first time in years. She had buried Moonshadow to be the respectable nurse and mother, but she was both Elena and Moonshadow, the shadows and the light. Mrs. Reyes, finally understanding, apologized softly. I see now they were your family. Elena squeezed her hand. And so are you. I'm lucky to have both. If this story reminded you that our past shapes us, but doesn't define us, like and share this video. Tell us in the comments, have you ever reconnected with someone from your past? How did it change you? Sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected places. A scar isn't just a mark. It's a reminder of who we were, who we are, and who we might become. Thank you for watching. Share this with someone who needs to remember their past is part of their strength, not their shame.